Hey everybody, good morning. Well, you might be watching this at night, but it's late morning as I shoot this video. This is the third day of the 2024 Toyota Series tournament on Smith Lake. I am eliminated, which is why I'm standing here doing this video right now. I finished, well, let me just start with, there were 242 boats in this tournament. And I finished 169th, which it's a hard one to take. I did not get a limit yesterday. The first day I had 5 for 10 pounds, 2 ounces, which landed me in 121st. Those are all spotted bass. I didn't really go for largemouth till the last hour and a half. And I did catch one like in the last minute. And it was just like it was like basically the same size as the rest of them, and I just eyeballed it because I didn't have time to pull out the culling beam and hook up all the culling straps and all that to the fish. So I just threw it back. But then I did have a good one. Hit a topwater or boil on a topwater. And I always feel like the kickers here are going to be largemouths. So, not always, but a lot of times. So in my mind, going into day 2, being that I was in 121st place, I felt like I had to have a bag comprised mainly of largemouths, including some good ones, in order for me to climb the ranks and land myself with decent points and land myself with a check out of this tournament, which is kind of similar to how the last Toyota Series went on Toledo Bend. I was being, not that there were spotted bass there, well, there are, but you don't even think about going for those because it's all big largemouth there that matter. But in the essence, it's similar to Toledo Bend in that after the first day, I was behind enough where if I just went out and did the same thing, I wasn't going to make nothing of it. And that's how this tournament was. If I went out and did the same spotted bass program, it wasn't going to amount to anything. Even if I did a little better on the spotted bass. I mean, I wasn't going to go out and catch 16 pounds of spotted bass. I have not been on that type of spotted bass out here. I have not been on that kind of a pattern out here with that size of fish. So I felt like my best chance was with the largemouths. So I was playing catch up here, just like I was playing catch up at Toledo Bend. And I knew the largemouth game was going to be a little riskier, considering the ones that I've been finding were all shallow. And it was another night of some super cold air temperatures and water temperatures dropping, which makes the shallow bite can be really hit hard on that kind of a weather trend. But anyways, so my plan going into day 2 was I was going to hit the largemouths and see how it goes for the first hour and a half, 2 hours. And then if nothing develops, then I was going to go get like 3 or 4 spotted bass and then go back to largemouths at the end of the day. Even though I may not limit out on the spotted bass, I'll just get 3 or 4, assuming knowing that I won't get the kickers the way I was fishing the spotted bass, knowing that, then I'll go out and try to get my lucky largemouth kickers in the last couple hours, and then that way I'll at least have some 2-pound spotted bass. I'm thinking if I could get a couple 3.5 pounders, that'd be 7 pounds of largemouths, and then have 6 pounds of spotted bass, that would put me right up in that, right close to the check range. And if I get 3 good largemouths, well then I'm in the check range. So that's why I felt like it wasn't important for me to fill out on the spotted bass, just get a few of them and then go back to largemouths where I was anticipating a better bite in the afternoon. So now here's how it actually played out. I did start with the largemouths. In the first 10 minutes, I caught my first one. It was probably like a 16 and a half incher, a little over 2 pounds. It was a male, I'm sure. In fact, I'd mentioned the good one that I saw the afternoon before, towards the end of the day, boil on a bait. I'm now, this largemouth that I just caught was probably the male that was paired with that female, because it was right in the same spot. And I got it super excellent, because after that boil, I got over there and I saw the female, and it was like a 3.5 pounder. It was a really good one. And so that was the male that was paired with that fish. And then, I don't know, probably fished another hour or so, and when I caught a second one about the same size. The first one was on a weightless Senko. The second one was on a topwater. Both were in the shade, which I think is key. They're both in the shade. And so now I got 2. They're not big ones, but they're like, both of them are like 2.25 pounders. So I'm like, okay, these fish can be part of a good catch, as long as my kickers have to still yet to come, but they can be part of a good catch. So now I'm like, yeah, I can just continue largemouth fishing, which I did. And then I come across actually I fished for a while and without any action. Then I go to a spot where there's I see a fish. The water's kind of murky, but I see a fish hiding in the shade. What's left of the shade. There's not much left now. The sun's getting up there. And get the power poles down. That's a power pole. That's that pole there. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm studying this fish. He's not scurrying away, but he's not on a bed either, because he's off the bank a little ways, just sitting in the shade. And of course I throw baits at him and he's not responding to anything, and he's kind of just wanders around a little bit. And then I see him go up to the bank, which is probably about 7-8. It was kind of a sharp bank where this was. He goes up to the bank where there was some grassy stuff growing along that was now flooded, because the lake had come up a little bit, and some of the shoreline grassy stuff was flooded. So he goes up to right up close to the shore in this grassy stuff, and he goes like this with his mouth, and that's telling me that he's trying to move something away from the bed that he's got there. So, and this is like a 3-pound fish. It's a good sized male now, is what I'm thinking. And after I see him do that, so now I'm like, okay, I guess that is a little bit of a brighter spot there on that bank. And then I notice he starts to revisit that spot. And a couple more times he did the same thing like this. And I'm like, man, that's exactly what they do a lot of times when I throw a bait on a bed and the fish wants it out of there. They'll do that before they actually bite it. They might nip at it like that. So I'm like, yeah, maybe I can catch this fish. So I really kind of bared down on it for a while. And the fish was not what they refer to as being locked on the bed. He would just mosey up there every once in a while, otherwise he'd hang out in that shade. Well, sometimes I get stubborn. And I know this fish could be part of a good catch. But, you get stubborn. And I knew better. I should have passed on this fish in the first 10 minutes, but I probably was there like 30 minutes, 35 minutes, switching different baits, switching up presentations. Having a lot of patience, because I'd throw it up in his bed, and then you'd have to wait for him to come back and visit his bed. And sometimes it'd be like 4 or 5. I mean, it'd be multiple minutes before he'd come back and check out his bed, and then you'd get your chance to present the bait, or I'd already have it in there waiting for him to get in there, and then you'd make your move with your bait, and nothing. He never responded to much of anything. There's one time when I threw like a really bright colored bait in there, and he kind of stared at it a little bit, but it was just a mild stare, but it was enough to keep me going. So anyways, I wasted over probably a half hour, maybe slightly more. I didn't time it. I finally let the fish win, gave up. But I'm like, well, okay, we'll just keep looking for largemouth. Well then, and up until this point, ever since I caught that second one, every place I had been visiting, I would actually see largemouths, some keepers, but they weren't responding to nothing. They were super weary, just very skittish, weary, not really. I mean, nothing that I could drop my power poles down on and expect to catch. These were just very difficult fish, and none of them were like great big ones. I mean, like I said, I saw some keepers, but they were like the two I already had, and I was like, you know what? Let's just hunt. We need to hunt down like a 3-pounder or better. And then I found that 3-pounder or better. But so anyhow, things were starting to get discouraging, but I stayed with the largemouths with the plan. Well, not really having a plan, just, hey, there's largemouths. I know where some largemouths are. As far as the type, the backs of the coves and that's where I'm checking, looking for them. Because just about every decent cove I've come across, there's some kind of largemouth back there, big or small. Well, fine. So then I come to this one area. It's a double pocket. It's like 2 pockets like this with a little point in them. They're both shallow. So I go through the one pocket and nothing happens. Then I get to this other pocket, and there's a couple flooded bushes there, and I'm looking between it, and I'm like, what is that? That must be a carp. And I drop the power poles down, because as it swims away, I'm like, well, I'm not sure if that was a carp or not, but it's pretty damn big. So I drop the power poles down just in case, and I wait there for about 15-20 seconds. And then I see a keeper male up there on a bed, and I'm like, oh, well, now I'm really not sure what I just saw. And then right about then, it's literally like this 6-pound largemouth swims out of the murk and hovers, off the bed, between me and the bed, and then he turns around and disappears. And now I turn my coin, and I'm like, my God, that's like a 5 to 6 pounder. And I'm pretty sure it's like closer to 6 pounds. It was like way, way bigger than anything. And big bass in this tournament for the first 2 days was, like the first day was like 4.12, and the next day was like right about the same. So this is like a substantial kicker for this lake. So now I'm like, okay, well, we got to sit here. And I'm like, if nothing else, I'll catch that male there, because he seemed like he was kind of locked into the game. And he even kind of turned on a bait, right? One of my first flips in there, he kind of turned on it. Well, I don't know what happened. The female came back a few minutes later, just gave me a brief glimpse of it, and then disappeared again. And meanwhile, that male largemouth like cooled off. I mean, he wasn't ready to bite. I was throwing different things in there, and he was disappearing off the bed and coming back and disappearing. And then finally, he just disappeared, gone. Well, and I waited around for like, I was going to say 10 minutes, probably wasn't that long, but 6 or 7 minutes, and I'm like, well, that male's not even that. I mean, normally the biggest males pair up with the biggest females, but in this case, it was like a 2.5 pound male, which would have been nice to have at that point. But I hadn't seen that fish. I hadn't seen the female for that's for at least 10 minutes. So I'm like, I got to find some easier fish than this to catch, because there's no way. I mean, that female was not giving herself up at all, and now the male wasn't. He just disappeared. So I'm like, all right, maybe I can come back here at the end of the day once I got a limit, and maybe things, maybe it'll be different circumstances. So I go largemouth fishing a little more, nothing. So I'm like, all right, let's just go get a couple spotted bass, and then we'll go back to largemouth fishing at the very end, because now it's literally, I'm due in at 3:15, and it's literally like almost 1 o'clock. And I thought I thought it would take no more. I thought I could really get my limit like in an hour, because it seemed like the bite out there got better towards the end of the day where I was fishing, the way I was fishing. Well, I caught a fair number of spotted bass, but only one keeper. And I caught that keeper with maybe 45 minutes to an hour left. And so I had 3 now with about 45 minutes of fishing left. And for whatever reason, this was probably a mistake, but I stayed out there, just trying to get a limit. And that was a mistake, because the keeper spot I did catch was just like the ones the day before, right about 2 pounds. And that's all I was going to get there, with more 2-pounders, more than likely 2.5. Maybe my coangler on the day one had like a 2.5 pounder. But realistically, that was the best that was going to come out of there. So I should have just pulled the plug right then and there, and went and tried to catch the largemouth. But I didn't. That was a mistake. So that's kind of how the strategy went down in this tournament. I really like fishing this lake. It's a great tournament lake, because no matter what the wind does, you can always compete. As compared to like Toledo Bend or Sam Rayburn or any Great Lakes, Lake St. Clair, Lake Champlain. Those big wide open bodies of water, wind is always going to play a factor, and potentially you have days canceled. Lake Texoma last year, 2 years ago now, had 2 days canceled. So, oops. So anyways, yeah, it's a great tournament. I like fishing here. I've usually done respectable here, but not this time. This was not it. And usually in these recap videos, I pull out some of the key baits, but why? I'm not going to do it this video, because what if I'm getting, to finish 169th, I had to be doing a lot wrong. So maybe my baits were wrong too, but I don't really, my spotted bass bait, not so much, because my co-angler and I were catching the equal amount the first day. He was doing one thing, I was doing another, but in the end we were catching an equal amount of fish out of that area. It was just a location thing. The size wasn't there for the spotted bass. This was not the size. So that was probably a locational issue. And that's and going back to Toledo, that's a lot of my mistake there was locational issues. So here, that was a locational issue. It wasn't the right size spotted bass, which I didn't know until you put some hours on it. You don't know it. But anyways, I'm not going to share the baits because 169th finish doesn't justify like, hey, you gotta use this bait out here, okay? Because it just doesn't make sense. So, but I think a lot of it was, a lot of my issues this term was locational selection on the spotted bass. If I was going to go for spotted bass, I needed to be in a position where there were bigger ones available, which I didn't really know that, I guess, until I put a few hours in on it. And then on the first day, it's like you don't know where a limited spot, you don't know where a limited spots for 10 pounds is going to place you. You don't know that. So especially with the bad super high winds we're having that first day, which is one reason why this lake's a great lake. Like I mentioned, you can still compete. But you don't know where that limit's going to land you. So I'm like, all right, I'll just keep catching these, and maybe I will get a good one. Well, the good one never came, and the limit for 10 pounds put me in 121st place. So then now I'm behind and trying to adjust strategy to perhaps put me back in the game with potentially. I did put myself in my day 2 strategy wasn't that bad, except for that last. I guess I thought I could get a couple quick spots, and I didn't. And then I got stubborn out there. I did make a couple mistakes. I did not. I should have just dismissed that 3-pounder on a bed immediately, or, after 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, that fish told me it was not catchable, and I needed to just pass on that. That would have saved me 20 minutes of fishing right there, at least, maybe 25. And then of course when I caught that third spot, it just took too long to catch. I couldn't catch them. I figured I could get my limit of spots in the last couple hours out there, but it sure didn't happen. I caught several, just there weren't as many keepers as there was the day before. So, but really, why did I even bother with those spots? I probably should have just stuck on the largemouth program. And in fact, and then I guess I'll just add this little part of the story too. I don't like, I was so pissed off that sometimes I'll do this when the lake gets the best of me. As soon as I weigh my fish and, say my parting ways with my co-angler, which I had 2 great co-anglers. Again, I haven't had a bad co-angler in a long time. See, it just seems like co-anglers are more and more and more. They're just very courteous. And maybe I'll do a video on co-anglers. So after I have my parting ways with the co-angler, then I get right back on my boat and go back out fishing. Obviously, there was still an hour left in the tournament for some guys who were last flight, so I kind of chose an area where I figured there won't be anybody, made sure there wasn't anybody around, and I went back fishing, trying some different things. And then there was an area I wanted to check out where I've driven by it a bunch of times and I never fished it. So I went over there and was throwing a Senko around up shallow for largemouths. Nothing was biting. But then I saw like a really big one. Like another 5 to 6 pounder. And this is crazy because big fish each day was like 4 3/4. And now this is my second, like 5 to, it was probably like 6 pounds. It was huge. And it was just chilling out up in this shallows, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. He was super wary, and there was no catching this fish because I spooked the crap out of him. Because at that point I put the trolling motor on high and was just looking. It wasn't even fishing. I was just looking to see what was up in these shallows. And I saw that one. I saw another good one, another keeper. And then finally I'm like, I'm gonna just fish through some more of this stuff. And I threw a spinnerbait like 3 casts in this tournament. So I pick up my spinnerbait. First cast, I catch one over 3 pounds with the spinnerbait. And I'm like, oh shit, maybe this is the biggest fish I've I've caught in 2 days. And so then about 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, I catch like a 2.5 pound spot on this thing, on the same spinnerbait. And now I'm like, holy crap. Obviously, I should have been throwing this. Well, then I fished for like the next 3 hours. I didn't have another bite on it. So much for that. But by then I changed kind of locations. I changed types of places, and but not entirely. I found some more of the same stuff and never got bit. So I don't know. It just left me with catching those 2 fish in that spinnerbait. It just left me with just as many questions as I had beforehand. Just makes things even more confusing. So anyways, that's my Smith Lake experience this time around. Thanks for watching the video and tuning in. I mean, to me, it amazes me to have people even watch these videos, especially when I have a tournament like this. So I know I appreciate it. My sponsors appreciate it, because they always like to see the clicks on the videos and the numbers, the views, and all that. That's important to sponsors, so that's good too. So thanks a lot for watching. Over.